Well, hi everyone. I'm Katie. Thank you for the intro, Stephanie. And I'll also just say thank you for asking me to do this. I think it's a really great idea. So I do one-on-one advising meetings with students. As some of you know, I see some familiar names, but actually not a lot, which is exciting to see some new people. And I'm realizing when Stephanie asked me to do this, I'm thinking, okay, it actually can make a lot of sense for me to really develop an internship presentation at this time of year, because this is when especially art students are looking. So I just wanted to say that because I'm actually kind of asking, I would love for you all to help me. So I took a presentation that I had already and sort of tailored it to this question of internships. You know, Stephanie, as you know, we were originally talking about the internship course, which I know a lot of people have questions about, and I'm going to talk about. But of course, to enroll in the course, you have to have an internship. So we wanted to get to that question too. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you all are here. And I'm just going to put it out there that I would love for you to sort of help me develop this presentation so I can really tailor it to SMFA students in the spring who are going, okay, what's the deal with this internship thing? How does this apply to me? So I think my ask is like, please feel free to ask questions. This can be really informal. You can stop me. You can put a question in the chat. I think maybe Stephanie, you can help alert me if I don't see it. Raise your hand or unmute yourself. And then I have some FAQs at the end, and then I'm leaving some time at the end for questions. But otherwise, let's get into it. So I'm going to share my screen. So let's get going. Here we go. Okay, so we're supposed to be talking about internships, but if you'll indulge me, I like to start with a career framework, because if you set up a meeting with me about internships, this is truly how I'm thinking about answering your question. I don't think about internships or any one question separately. I think about it as sort of building skills that you're going to be utilizing over and over again, right? Because I'm sure you've heard this before, but there's stats out there about the number of times your generation is going to, switch jobs, switch careers. So it's really not about one decision that you're making right now. It's really about sort of building skills that you can practice and that you can utilize and that you'll continue to utilize post SMFA. So I think about something like an internship in this like explore and experience category here. But you can see it's a circle, right? It's not like sort of pointing toward an end goal. So the why do an internship is sort of self-knowledge that sort of connects to this internship. So my guess is that most people are doing internships, and I really usually like to refer to it more generally as experiences, working with a lot of SMFA students. Like, yes, some of them do like official internships, like I'm sure you all have heard of like the MFA ones. And a lot of them don't. A lot of them get experience, professional experience, external experience in other ways, and we can get into that. But the why I think is kind of personal. To me, I would say there's usually some element of trying it out, right? I think I might want to do this. Let me see what this is like. And so that's why it's sort of connected to this self-knowledge. And it's nice to like take a little time to think of that before you just dive into like applying. You're going to be able to apply easier if you've kind of already done a little bit of that work of why am I doing this? How is this going to help me? Is this going to sort of test out some theories of things I think I might be interested in? I'm going to kind of go through this again, but you can see this is also connected to the tell your story. Obviously, you're going to need to have your documents in order to apply to these places. And then once you go through these experiences, you're going to come back to those documents. And by documents, I mean your resume, your cover letter, maybe your portfolio, and add to that from there. So I, again, like to think about it with that framework. And that's why I've sort of broken it up into these categories. It just helps me think about it. It helps me think about where students are in that process. And it sort of helps us, I think, break out of that framework of like career is like one decision that you make, one huge decision that you make, and it could be right or wrong. So know your I and why, we were just talking about that. Take some time to think about your interests and your strengths. And we have a lot of resources on our website. So I'm just going to click into this real quick with the hope that you actually can see this. Sorry, did someone say something?
I don't think so.
Okay, then can you see this, the Career
Yes.
Center? Oh, wonderful. Okay, so here
Well,
is
actually, no, we're still seeing your, sorry,
okay.
Katie, we're still just
Yep.
seeing your.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like some new people have joined too. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Feel free to chime in with questions. I might just have to kind of pop back and forth between my screens real quick. So this is like the exploratory part of our website. Are you able to see this? It says exploring your interests, careers, and majors.
Yes.
And another thing I was going to ask you, Stephanie, is I thought we could send out the PowerPoint to folks because it's all like hyperlinked so that they can access these resources on their own afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. We can send them to people and then we can also post to our academic essentials site.
Cool. Perfect. So take a little time, there's things like competencies and career readiness, skills and interest, and then destination outcomes. So we actually have to track where students are going after they graduate. The data on SMFA graduation isn't we don't have a lot of it yet, but we are working on it. And it's still really interesting to sort of poke around and say, where do Tufts students go? This one is from 2022, organized by majors, and sort of just to get the wheels turning again, if you're sort of at that exploratory place. Sometimes it's nice to just see what other people are doing and just sort of say like, oh, that wasn't even on my radar. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. Okay, so explore and experience. You can see this again, right? The PowerPoint.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. So that's sort of the crux, I know, of what we're talking about. And I'd already mentioned this, but remember, I really like to refer to them as experiences, and it's not just official internships. Internships are great. Do they look good on your resume? Yes, of course they look good on your resume. They're also very competitive. You know, an internship that I talk to a lot of students about are the MFA internships. Obviously, it's convenient. It's a big name institution. They sort of have a formalized program that's great. And we actually do send a good amount of SMFA students there. It's something that feels within reach. They're very, as many of you probably know, tilted towards upperclassmen. And they're competitive. So I think, again, thinking about how do I get experience on my resume to make me competitive for competitive internships, if that's something you think you might want. Again, not everyone wants it. It's just about getting the experiences. I really try. So again, to go back to the MFA example, I am going to personally make sure that when the MFA internships open up, that is mentioned in that SMFA update email. I hope you all get that. I hope you all read that. By no means is that comprehensive, but in terms of kind of very tailored opportunities for SMFA students, it really is a great place. It would just really be a shame to not be consistently checking that email because you have staff people from all over the university putting really good stuff in that. And it's very curated, it's very tailored to what you're looking for. Another really good jumping off point for exploring is this blog post I do my best to keep updated it's actually a series that we do called Where Do Students Intern? Where do Tufts students intern? Sorry, I'm trying to go back into this so you can see it. And then I am responsible for updating the Where Do Students Intern Arts Edition. So this is, I don't know where every single art student interns, but I do know where a lot of them intern. And I do my best to try to keep this updated. It's not the type of thing that I can say, oh, sure, like you want this internship, we can give it to you. I actually think that's a good thing. I think sort of going through the forcing function of really having to get your own internship is like really, really, really good practice. You can come out of SMFA having already gone through the experience of updating your resume, of interviewing, all those things. So again, this is just sort of a good jumping off point when a student kind of will say something to the extent of like, what types of internships do students even do with the BFA? I like to direct them to this page. I mean, not only is it BFA students, but it's SMFA students. So you can see that the majority of them are local, but a lot of students are doing summer internships back at home. So you can see a Colorado, there's even an Australia one here. But again, I mean, it's just to give you an idea. You can see, and you can also see the diversity of internships. I mean, there's like a user experience design intern, so students are going sort of a very technical direction. And then there's also things like a blacksmith assistant, where students are doing sort of using like very like their their craft skills for very hands-on experience. Certainly things that you might expect, like graphic design, residencies, product design. The Poly Thayer Star Studio intern is actually our only sort of SMFA funded internship. It runs out of the Gardner Museum, so it's very convenient. And I do have insider info that they are opening it up. They haven't posted it yet, but that will be opened up for this summer. Again, another good motivation to be checking on that update email, because I'm going to make sure that that's in there. And just really kind of staying connected to opportunities that are for SMFA and for Tufts students. Like, even though these opportunities are competitive too, they're less competitive than competing against all the other art students in the city, right? So that's always a good place to start, is like, what's going on for Tufts students, what's going on at Tufts, is a great place to start and sort of leverage that experience externally as you get older and go through the years at SMFA. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Now that I'm having to manually do this, I might not click on as many links, but we can always go back if you have questions. Are you guys seeing my PowerPoint again here?
We can see it, yes.
Okay. So that's a great one, and I did want to kind of get into that one, but there's so many other resources. I know, to the point that it can almost be overwhelming, and that's when I will say that having a personal touch, like meeting with me or meeting with one of my career fellows, which I'm going to talk about at the end. If you're feeling just sort of overwhelmed, which is a very normal feeling to feel, having someone kind of talk you through it, I think, can really help and sort of curate there's so many resources and opportunities, kind of curate it down for you a bit. Don't forget, some SMFA students are interested in like residencies. There's so many residency opportunities out there. Some other just like places to look. I know people are just looking for that type of information. I would really start with Handshake. It kind of goes to what I was saying before with like, what are the opportunities that are for Tufts students? Like, Handshake is a place where employers are coming and looking for you, putting in there saying, oh, we want to work with Tufts students and SMFA students. And you can also set alerts. So you really want to use technology in your favor. So if you go into Handshake, and you're like playing, I really just recommend like playing around with the filters until you're starting to see things that are interesting to you. Certainly, if you have a geography filter, that's a good way to just sort of like narrow down a lot of stuff right away. Try some keywords and stuff like that. Okay, I'm actually seeing some interesting stuff. In Handshake, there's a way to save it. You'll see it's like over on the left-hand side. It's pretty obvious. Save this search. Of course, it's an algorithm, which I know most of you are used to using. Use that in your favor. So the more you play around with it, the more you like it, the more you filter, the more it's going to realize, like, serve you up stuff that actually feels relevant to you. And then what else do we have here? Higher Culture is Massachusetts-based arts institutions. Idealist is national, from all over the country, all different levels as well. New York Foundation for the Arts is a great resource. It is obviously New York-based, but a lot of folks are looking there. I mentioned the update email and the Boston Art Review. Any sort of local Boston arts publications often have like opportunities, studio assistant roles, stuff like that. If that's something, I talk to students who are really interested in, again, sort of those big name internships. And then I talk to students who I'm like, I'm really interested in moving my professional practice forward. And that's, I see a lot of times those students kind of going for the studio assistant roles or the artist assistant roles. Create your own list. If you have organizations that you know of locally and like, it's not going to be a super extensive list to sort of, just put it into a Google Doc and start tracking. It's really how your brain works. I actually think I have another slide where I talk about this more in depth, but how do you approach a research project? Are you someone that really likes using social media, or do you get on social media and get like distracted by it? I do see students use it really effectively. Maybe they follow some key organizations that really appeal to them on Instagram. Those are the types of sometimes those smaller organizations don't even post internships or jobs on bigger job boards because they don't want to get 1,000 applicants. Maybe they're just, telling sort of the people who are already interested in that organization via Instagram, via their newsletter. So I think it's kind of a both and approach of, yes, check the job boards, set the alerts, but also kind of try to narrow down what you're interested in. I talked to some students who are really like, if I hear that they're really narrowed down to what they want to do, they're like, I really want to get an internship in development in a arts related organization in Boston. I'm like, wow, that's really specific. Like, I feel like you could come up with a pretty comprehensive list there where, again, maybe you're linking to their HR site. Maybe you're making notations if you found like alumni that you can connect to, however it works for you to track that and kind of continue to move forward on that. And then again, don't forget about like the sort of the Tufts specific stuff. There's just so much available at Tufts. Again, it's almost overwhelming. Like the Career Center has an internship grant program. Again, that's been in the Monday update email to fund unpaid internships, especially through nonprofits, which sometimes comes up in the arts world. There's all sorts of summer opportunities through Tisch. There's research opportunities. And again, they can be competitive, but you're not competing against everybody in Boston. So it's a great place to start. Any questions about that? Okay, navigate your networks. You'd be surprised. So a lot of times when students set up appointments about internships, we get to sort of the networking question pretty quickly. I just really see them as being very connected. And I'm happy that I know this presentation is not on networking, so I'm not going to get too into it. But if you want me to at the end, if anyone wants to ask, I'll just say that networking is really important to any industry. There's a reason that Tufts has spent a lot of money and resources on our own networking platform called The Herd, which if you've not checked out, you really, really should. They see it as being very integral to career success. And it's also part of what you get from coming here, right? So I think before these networking platforms exist, it was sort of hard to understand. I think networks kind of felt vague. They certainly felt invisible. And I think these networking platforms are like making these things visible, right? So it's like, no, you are connected to a network. You do have connections. You might not feel that way as an undergraduate student, but hey, take a look at The Herd and look at these thousands of Tufts alums who put themselves in here to help and to answer questions for you. And I'll just add that I think that's particularly important in the arts space. I think it's really a world that's not in a who you know type way. Just again, a lot of times we're talking about organizations that are small, that might not have sort of a fully built out human resources department that can come to Tufts and do some big recruiting event. And so they're operating on a smaller kind of way that oftentimes is about connections, network, a friend connecting a friend, to help someone out. So I think it's worth a little practice in thinking about that. And I can promise you that any kind of internship or job search is going to go better and more effectively if you kind of think about networking alongside of that. And I have some helpful resources that you'll get when you get this PowerPoint. I really, really recommend looking at the Tufts career guide. I'm going to talk about, booking one-on-one appointments with me, which I would love to see each and every one of you. I love meeting SMFA students. I know a lot of you at this point. I would just ask, I think it's worth doing a quick look in the Tufts career guide before we meet, because if I take a look at your resume, I'm going to be pulling that up and showing you sort of the way that we tend to advise students to do resumes. And I know that there's so much information out there online, again, about resumes. And oftentimes I find that when students are just Googling, they're finding resume templates that aren't necessarily right for like early career folks. They might be like mid-career, they might just not fit with like a student. And that's the beauty of the Tufts one. And you can really feel free to sort of mimic one of those templates. And obviously, feel free to put your own spin on it, but it's a great resource in general that's going to help you think about these like documents, like the cover letter, and how you're telling your story in a way that feels like real and authentic and feels like in your own voice, but will sort of give you like a jumping off point for that. Oh, and then I like, especially with working with art students, I'll oftentimes just say like, again, with art students, it's usually like, who are the artists that inspire you? Like, who's your favorite artist? What does their website look like? Like that's a question that I'll often ask students to sort of help them get thinking about how they're creating their own persona. And sometimes they use the word brand, sometimes they don't. Some people like that word, some people don't. But certainly I like the idea of like telling your story. And there's so many different ways to do that now that you kind of have to be sort of thoughtful about. Reflect and recalibrate is the last one on that sort of initial diagram, which might seem a little bit like the throwaway one, but it's really, really not. I actually would probably argue that it might be the most important. If you go after that internship and you get it, and I'm sure you worked super hard to get it, you probably sent out a ton of applications, you did a ton of cover letter revisions, you networked, all this stuff. It would really be a shame if you didn't sort of like take the time and whatever that looks like for you to think about it after the fact and to say, what did I enjoy that internship? Do I like working at a museum? Would I want to work at a place like the MFA? What did I like about it? Did I like being in an office all day? And whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's a conversation partner, maybe it's cultivating relationships with mentors in the industry, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's talking to peers. You have each other to kind of that are going through this together, which is really nice. And wouldn't underestimate the power of that. So I think that's the last one sort of in my original diagram that I was showing you to begin with. But I did want to kind of pull out the searching piece in particular, because I had a feeling that was why a lot of people showed up to this. So I covered a lot of that, but just to kind of recap, I added a couple of more good platforms for searching. But then, yeah, if you know of someone at SMFA, and I showed you that site, Where Did Tufts Students Intern Arts Edition, you might even recognize the person who was at the place. Oh yeah, I heard this person in my class talking about interning at this place. Ask them, what is it like? Which platforms were you looking at? Because there's so many of them out there. It's hard for me to answer that question sometimes for students. I wish I could just say, oh yeah, go to this one. Everything is posted here. But it's not. So I think it's really, again, about following your own interests. If something catches your interest, that means something. Who can you connect with at that place? Where did they find that internship? What did they find helpful? What was the interview like for them? Just kind of keep following that thread. And then the faculty too, obviously the SMFA faculty are amazing connection points. And to be honest, sometimes I see internships happening through the faculty. To give you an example, Sam Fields, who's an amazing fiber artist who I'm sure a lot of you know, she often hires interns to help her at her, she has like a really cool new like kind of community studio. So again, when students say like about networking, like I don't have any connections, the answer is actually you do. You might just not feel like you do. So kind of putting it out there. If you have a faculty person you're close to, or you've just seen a faculty person whose work you really admire, like, asking for a little bit of their time, like you're not directly asking them for a job, but I think that you can put out there, like, I am for summer internship. Do you have any advice? Where do you have any advice of where I can start? Because people can't help you or people can't offer you things if they don't know that you're looking. So I do think, again, it comes back to the networking piece. We talked about making a list of organizations. Students do this a lot. Again, I often kind of see like a kind of a Google Doc spreadsheet, but I think you should do it however makes sense for you and however you kind of are able to make sense of a lot of information, and you kind of use like a tracking function, because it's just a lot. It's a lot, especially once you start sending things out. It's nice to keep track of like, I did apply, here's the date I applied, I have some connections related to this opportunity. And I think I kind of jumped ahead that, again, like, use technology to work for you. If it's like automating searches on particular sites, that is really helpful. And then if you find social media helpful, I find it helpful for staying on top of opportunities, of just really trying to follow organizations that I knew students are interested in. And really oftentimes they are posting the opportunities on Instagram, and then they're coming to me, right? Instead of me going to them. You can do the same with like newsletters if you kind of don't want to get into it with the social media stuff, or not. Just find out what works for you. Like to go back to the very first thing I said, like this is about building a skill set that you are going to use over and over. And there's going to be some trial and error involved, and that's okay. See what else I have here. Oh, I wanted to give a special shout out. I don't think my one career fellow, Aline, is here. She's amazing, and I'm going to talk about my career fellows more. But I was thinking about in my last slide, I think I said something like make a list and you can also just reach out. Like if you have an organization that you love, let's say Barefoot Books is like a local small publisher, does really like beautiful children's books that I feel like a lot of like art students are interested in because they're just like gorgeous. They're small, right? And so yeah, like check their HR page. Maybe they have internships listed, maybe they don't. If they don't, but they have their generic HR email address sitting there, or maybe a non-generic email address, why not reach out? Do I hear about students getting jobs this way? Honestly, yes, I do, is the answer. I have heard of students getting interesting experiences and opportunities in every which way. I have heard of students, I had a student who had a really amazing internship at a very, very cool local gallery that I know of a lot of students who want to work there. And I said, of course, how did you get this internship? And she said, I walked in one day and I asked to speak to her, and I asked her if she needed help. And obviously that's not a guarantee. I mean, that's not something you hear about every day, but I just want to say that stuff does happen. Is there timing and luck involved in it? Of course there is. But really sometimes that personal touch actually really differentiates you from just, yes, definitely like just apply to the open applications. I also see lots of students get amazing internships at the MFA by just following the directions and writing the cover letters. But also reach out. And so anyway, Aline, who's sort of just like the best at this, sent me, she was like, I have an awesome template. I use it all the time. I mean, you'll see in my other networking links that I sent you, you'll see other templates and suggestions, but I just thought it was kind of fun to show you the real template of a real SMFA student. She uses this. She has had great success with it. She has had amazing internships and experiences. So I just thought it would be kind of fun to throw this in and to really encourage you, like students are doing this and it's working. Any questions? Okay, internship for studio credit. I know folks are definitely interested in this. So there's an opportunity to get credit for doing an internship. As it says, it is administered through a course that I oversee. The course is not a heavy lift. The lift is mostly about doing the hours. The number of credits are directly correlated to the number of hours you plan to do over the course of the semester. There are a good amount of requirements. I would be happy to talk to folks about it individually. But again, if you want to meet with me, you want to talk to me, I really just recommend, and I'll click on this in a minute, just really kind of going through all of these requirements. Am I going to have a supervisor? Is this on site? We really haven't been approving remote internships. You have to be a sophomore. You have to be in your fall semester of sophomore year. That's sort of to encourage students, again, from it's really hard to get an internship as a first year. And so some of these policies sort of reflect sort of the natural expectation that you wouldn't have an internship yet. Like get your feet under yourself. There are ways, again, and I'm going to get into this more, to kind of get creative about getting that experience so that you can become more competitive for these internships. But you're not going to be eligible for this credit until you're at least a sophomore. Again, and some students get on the call and they think like, oh, there's just like a list of internships I pick from. As I already said, there's not, but I'm here and my career fellows are here to support you. And I can just tell you that anecdotally, a lot of the students who say I'm interested in doing this are able to work it out. Like, is it tricky sort of to say like, I think I want to do this for credit, but it's sort of dependent on if I get something and get the right thing? Yeah, it is a little tricky, I think. And Stephanie can speak to this, but my understanding is that usually students will register for like an actual class. that if they're able to secure the internship before the ad drop date, they'll then drop and swap out for the internship. So it's almost sort of like defaulting to being like, I might not get the internship. And then if you do, you're able to sort of plug it in. And that's all going to go through me. I have to approve your internship, and then I give you the ability to register for it. Keep in mind that if you do a summer internship, and most summer internships are eligible for the maximum amount of credits, which is 6, because, a lot of times you're doing it full time. You are paying for those credits. They're real Tufts credits that go towards your degree. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget about that, because if you do it sort of during the school year, it's more caught up in sort of your normal tuition payment. And it can be a bit of a sticker shock to be like, oh my God, 6 credits just paid for in the summer is a lot of money. So that's something I always kind of like lead off with students, because I don't want them to be surprised. If you are on financial aid, you can usually work at the financial aid department to potentially have that extended into summer, but it's not guaranteed. I will just really quickly click on this just to show you what it looks like. But again, if it's something you're interested in, you're going to have all of the links, and you can go through here and take a look. So this is it. So you have to be an enrolled student, and you can see this is what I mean. It must take place on site. It can't just be like a freelance project. You need a supervisor. The idea behind it is really just having a professional experience and not just like doing some extra work on the side. And a big benefit of that is, of course, the network. The network is one of the huge benefits of doing any kind of experience, of meeting other colleagues, having a supervisor. And now that I've gotten out of this, I actually see there might be a question in the chat. If you get a summer internship between freshman and sophomore year, unfortunately, no. You have to be a first semester sophomore. It doesn't mean you can't do the internship. It just means that you're not eligible for the credits. Yeah, but you have, starting your first semester of sophomore year, so that gives you a lot of semesters of availability. Again, look through that document. There are, again, some little things that you might not think of, like you can only do an internship at the same organization twice. You can't do the same internship twice. So sometimes students are like, oh, I got offered to come back. Well, it's going to have to be a different internship. And the analogy is like, you can't get credit for the same class twice, right? So that's sort of the thinking behind it. If you can you could stay at the same organization, but do a different internship, but you can only do that twice. So that's why it almost makes sense to wait a little bit, because there are a lot of restrictions anyway. Thank you, Stephanie. Let's see. I don't think I have too much more. Okay, FAQs. So these are questions that I hear from students. It's nice to see some people's faces here, so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. What is the hiring timeline? This is kind of like the what job board should I go to? And I really, really wish, for all of our sake, I just had a really easy answer. And the answer is, it depends. I would say, I'll give you my sort of opinion, which is that most of the internships that I see SMFA students interested in are like around now. Like usually SMFA students come back from winter break, having like done, again, a bit of research, a bit of digging around. Maybe they've put together a list of some of the organizations that they're interested in, or thought about where they're going to be geographically. Okay, I think I'm going to be home. I'm going to start thinking about who I might know at home that could help me. And then they kind of like launch into like a search sort of like shortly after they're back, like late January, early February, with, things popping up kind of through the early part of the spring. There are anomalies to that. I think a general rule of thumb is that the bigger the organization and sort of the more structured the internship, typically the earlier the application is because they know, right? They know that at Sotheby's, for example, in New York, I have students who are interested in going there. That's a good example. They know, they're a big organization. I think they're pretty well financed. So like, we always have a summer internship program where we always take X amount of students. Let's just post it early. Let's get them in here early. Let's get the best students. And there's lots of smaller organizations that just don't know. They don't know what their funding is going to be. They don't know who's going to be overseeing that person yet, or people. So that's the way I try to think about it logically, of like, what types of organizations and why, just to give you a sense of like, if you're kind of feeling like you fall into one of those categories very, very clearly, then you kind of have a more of a sense if you're at the early end of that hiring timeline. And I do have SMFA students who are applying to things like that, to like the Sotheby's, to the Met, sort of late fall, like late fall semester, you know, November-ish, December-ish. But then have I seen students get cool offers like in April, in early May, even maybe something a little more informal? Yeah, I have. So again, that's not an easy answer, but I would say if you're an upperclassman and really committed to getting an internship this summer, I would carve out time now and meet with me soon. Would be my advice. When do I do an internship? We talked about this a little bit. Honestly, it's just a little unrealistic to get an internship after your first year. It happens. And again, definitely see students get some, you know, experience related to what they're interested in. But those big name internships are just very competitive. And I think it's just the right thing for students to kind of know the reality. And so, but I think it's good to think about it in terms of building your resume like brick by brick, you know, and starting out with the experience. If you think that's something you want, you know, again, to go back to the networking again, like maybe let's say your dream is to get one of the MFA internships your first year, you know, that's probably not going to happen this year. Something that I would do, try to connect with this SMFA student who's gotten one of those internships and ask them, what do you think was on your resume that made you really competitive, that made them like interested in your resume? That's a really good question to ask, especially if they had one of the internships that you were really interested in. So it's really kind of, again, about following the threads of your own interest. Okay, so this is the question that I feel like underlies so many of the questions that I get from students. It's not usually articulated like this, but this is how I articulate it. And I think it's like a really, really good question. And it's sort of at the heart of so much of this work. How do I get experience if every place is asking for experience? This is impossible. This is like a practical joke, right? Like how I can't. And the answer is you have to get really creative. And luckily you're art students, so you already are really creative. But what I wanted to do was give you a couple of examples. I always have like examples off the top of my head. So one is a student I worked with who was really interested in sort of breaking into graphic design and like branding and stuff like that. Her mom's friend was starting a chocolate, like a really small chocolate business. And she said, can I design your logo? And the mom's friend, of course, was like, yeah, you can design my logo. I don't know. I guess I was going to hire an artist. And that looked really good on her resume. I mean, she didn't, you know, your resume doesn't put, you know, state the number of hours you worked on something, right? So sometimes students will just take on, I'm not saying you have to devote your whole summer to doing like a volunteer experience. That's a lot to ask someone to take on because it's totally reasonable that you need money to support yourself. And if you're doing work, you should get paid for it. But if there are things that you think would improve your resume, improve your especially your portfolio, you know, something that you could do that you know you could put directly in your portfolio, that's often worth it. Especially if it's not going to be a full-time thing, it's going to be a little gig. I also see students really effectively translate things that they're doing at SMFA and Tufts on their resume. A big one that stands out to me is like the Tufts Daily. I don't know, you know, obviously art students aren't always interested in that, but sometimes they are interested in different types of publications. People know the Tufts Daily. It's a very well-known college newspaper. And if you're doing something like you're doing layout, you're doing graphics for them, I mean, that's real experience. You didn't have to go head to head with someone to apply for some fancy internship in Boston, but you're actually getting the same experience. And that can translate really, really well on a website. So again, or on a resume. So again, thinking about what is accessible, what kinds of experiences are accessible to me as a Tufts student, as an SMFA student, that can translate into sort of these transferable skills on my resume. Where can I get help? Of course, the answer is I'm happy to help. I've worked with a lot of SMFA students. You can book with me for one-on-one career advising appointments through Handshake. I also wanted to talk about my career fellows. I can't remember where I built them in. I have two awesome career fellows. So the Career Center has a career fellows program that's been running a long time. It's a group of undergraduate students who are really highly trained. They go through a lot of training on career development, on reviewing documents, on opportunities. And it's exciting because this is the second year we've had SMFA specific career fellows. So two BFA students, so they are sitting in your shoes, who can sort of translate all the resources and knowledge from the Tufts Career Center to the SMFA experience. And they're awesome if you know them. And I think Sam might be here, and I'll get to Sam at the end if they are here. I can introduce them. I did want to take a moment to talk about international students because I know any kind of work or internship can be a little bit more complicated. I won't get too into the details because, again, this is another thing that kind of the fine print and all the details are important. It can be a little tricky to work between offices, but what I really wanted to get across was that to do an internship in the US as an international student, you can use CPT. I think it's curricular practical training, which is work authorization. So if you were, going through an application process and they said, "Do you have work authorization?" The answer would be yes, you do, because you could apply to CPT, which is work authorization through Tufts. You do it through the International Center. However, CPT does require an academic component. And so a lot of the international students have been using, as I mentioned before, the Internship for Studio Credit course as the academic component. International students are allowed to register for it for 1 credit. So it's like the type of thing that if they were like, "I really don't even need this credit, I'm just doing it for CPT," you are allowed to register for 1 credit because, again, you're paying for the credits. And as long as the internship that you want to do met the requirements, essentially to enroll you in the course, and then I would work, then we would work together with the International Center. I would approve your CPT and you would have work authorization. You'd also be in the course. It's honestly a pretty small lift. Again, the course is mostly about completing the hours. You do have to submit a portfolio or something equivalent at the end to show what you've been doing, but it's not like you're sitting in a class weekly or anything like that. You could also do it for more credits if you needed studio credits, but we have recently made that change that it's available for 1 credit to hopefully help international students be able to get their CPT work authorization. Questions? Yes. And so I already mentioned you can book with me, and then here are my career fellows again who run SMFA career labs Mondays in the evening, 4:30 to 6:30. And then Wednesdays, 12 to 4 is the main day that Sam and Aline, you may have seen them, are in the SMFA atrium. So they're right there. You can stop by with a quick question. You can get your documents reviewed. Sometimes students are like, "I'm sending in this application tomorrow. Can you just read it for me?" We're also kind of just kicking off the season of portfolio reviews in preparation for the portfolio review day in April. We're hoping that a lot of folks sign up for that. We're going to have really good external reviewers that, again, in the spirit of networking, making connections, taking opportunities that are available. I would highly recommend that you sign up and you can get your portfolio reviewed by myself or by one of the career fellows. That's it. Got through it all. I see just a question about the slideshow. I wanted to see, it looks like Sam's not here. I thought Sam was here, but that's okay. I can assure you that Sam Webb, my career fellow, is awesome. I'm sure some of you know them already, and Aline Chalfin is my other career fellow. Yeah, credits are really cool. I usually just look on the student services site, the Tufts Student Services site, to sort of see what the per credit cost is these days. I will tell you, and I kind of hate to even say this out loud, but it is around the $1,000 per credit mark. And again, if you are on some kind of financial aid, you can work with financial aid to potentially get that extended through summer. If you're just doing it in the fall, as a class, you're kind of substituting a class for it. It's just going to be bundled into your regular tuition payment. Thanks, Stephanie. I would really love to hear any other questions.
Yes, I do have a question. And so my question is about networking. So, for example, if I know someone in a department at a museum, that I want to apply for like another positions as another department, can I ask them for like referral or like ask them to connect me with that other department that I want to apply to?
That's a good question. Is it for one of the internships?
Yes.
Um, you could. I mean, I think in general, our advice with networking, and this might not have been what you were asking exactly, but it's usually not about necessarily just asking for, um, like it's usually not just like asking like, can you help me with this internship, for example. It's more like a more
Mm,
general. I'm really like if like I'm trying to think what I would do if I were you. So you have a connection at a different, I'd probably let them know that I was really interested in the internship at such and such a department. And do they have any advice, or is there anyone they could connect you with that could just give you a little bit more information about the internship?
mm,
I think I was actually just talking about this with a student who said that, they had a lot of connections, but they said to one of their connections, like, are you hiring? And the person was just like,
mm,
oh no, no, I'm so discombobulated right now. I'm not hiring. And it kind of, he kind of retreated a little bit. I think sometimes people worry, like, because people have so little say so over hiring decisions that they
mm,
kind of get worried. I think you have to kind of put them at ease that you're like, no, no, I just want to pick your brain about it. Like, I just want to hear a little bit more about it and being like really clear about what you're asking for. Like, do you have any advice about applying for in the curation
mm,
department? Because I think,
I see.
oh no, they're gonna like ask me to like hire them. Then they kind of get like a little
Mm,
like nervous about that because like I don't have any like say so or pull over that.
mm, I see. Yeah, see, those are very good advice.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and may I also ask that like I set up with you a meeting at the end of this week, but I just want to ask beforehand that do you have like a list of the job that is available right now for art curation?
Hold on a second. I wanted to find you. I do have a really good networking resource that I wanted to put in the chat for you. Hold on a second.
Awesome, thank you.
Um, I let me see if I'm trying to think if I put PowerPoint. I know there's not one place where curation job. Remind me again, is it internships or jobs?
It's a summer internship.
Summer internship. And do you know where you're going to be geographically?
Like I can be anywhere on the US.
Be anywhere. Okay. Um, there is a I can't remember it off the top of my head, but if you want to stay on the call, there is like a an association of like art curators, professional association that does
Mm,
have. Don't always find it helpful because usually students are much more limited geographically, and it is like
mhm,
for here, but that actually might work well for you.
mhm.
Um, so I will try to see if I can find that for you. And if not, we can just email about it. But
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, I usually just see students are looking more geographically. So if it's a curation thing, they might, again, it's not like an exhaustive list. Like if you were going to stay in New York, in Boston, for example, a student might just like list off the places they'd be most interested in. I also see students really utilize well work at the Tufts University art galleries
Mhm,
as a good way to sort of jump get like that experience, even if they weren't curating directly, to work with the curators and to just show that they have gallery experience kind of translates really well to that like next sort of like external step.
I see. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Okay, I
Katie,
will show you an email with that.
Yeah, yeah. Will you send me an email and I send you this? I don't want to keep
Yeah,
everyone
thank
up
you.
for that.
and Katie, we have one question from Natalie here, who's asking, would year-long internships be eligible for credit?
Yeah, so we'd have to break it down for the semester. So basically we'd have to look at how many hours you were doing for one of the semesters. Since you can't do the same internship twice, you could essentially be eligible for one of the semesters of the year-long internship, if that makes sense. And let me know if, maybe Natalie's not here anymore. Oh no, you are. Okay. Yes. I hope that answered your question, but let me know if you have any follow-ups to that.
Okay, any last questions before we wrap things up? Okay, all right. So yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for all of this time and this rich information. And we will be putting the slideshow, well, we'll be sending it to everyone. We'll also be posting it to Academic Essentials. And you can feel free to ask questions. You can email smfaadvising@tufts.edu, and we can always pick Katie's brain on your behalf or forward her your emails. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. And thank you again, Katie.
Welcome. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
take care. Bye.